Biden campaign spokesperson Kevin Munoz. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Let's talk about the thought around unity right now. It is a call that is now being cast over both political parties, given the events over the weekend. How can Biden oppose his opponent, Donald Trump, his staunchest rival, while also not using incendiary language that the extremes hear? It's a delicate balance.
Well, thank you for having me, Marni. Look, it is so important, and you heard this from the president in his Oval Address on Sunday evening, the critical role that a president can play as a uniter-in-chief in this moment, and to say to the American people, we can disagree. We can disagree aggressively on the issues, but we have to respect each other as fellow Americans, and we have to understand that political violence, Republican or Democrat aside, we have to call it out for what it is. It is unacceptable in our democracy, whether it was what happened to Donald Trump this weekend or what happened on January 6th or what happened to Paul Pelosi. And we have to move forward as a country united in the fact that we can no longer tolerate political violence in this country. And look, this is the North Star of Joe Biden's campaign. It's why he got into the race in 2020 because of Charlottesville. It's why he's in this race in 2024. And I can expect you to hear him talk about that and all of the issues that matter to our voters this November.
One of the things that he has continued to say is that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. What does he mean by that? And is that a phrase he will continue to say?
Well, let's just look at what Donald Trump has said and what he has done. It's really important that while we call out just the absolute horror and tragedy of what happened this past weekend, that we cannot condone any language or actions that inspire violence. And look, we saw what Donald Trump said after the brutal attack on Paul Pelosi. We saw what his words did to inspire a violent mob that killed law enforcement on January 6th. Our view is that Republican or Democrat, that language, that rhetoric, those actions have no place in a democracy. And I think you can hear the president talk about that issue. And you know this, but voters care about political violence. They are worried about it. They are concerned about it. And they deserve elected officials, and they deserve to have this candidate talk about this issue and take it on head on.
The assassination attempt has shifted the conversation, at least for now, but the president will continue to get questions about his age. He did in the NBC interview, and he is defiant that he is old, but he is still up for the job. Why is he so quick to dismiss, however, calls from his own party to step aside? And what will be the strategy as those calls may come back around once the focus shifts back to that topic?
Well, look, I think that the president has been more than clear. He is running, he is our nominee, and he is going to beat Donald Trump this November. And he's going to do it by bringing the Democratic coalition together to focus on the stakes of this election. Every single day that we do not talk about the Project 2025 agenda is a day wasted. And that's why it is so important this week, as the Republican National Convention really begins in earnest today, that we continue to talk about the attacks on our rights, the attacks on the backbone of this country, the democracy, and the fight that we need to continue to have to lower costs and create jobs here at home. When the president is out there, when our organizers are out there talking to these undecided voters in states like Michigan or Nevada, like where Joe Biden is today, they care about who's lowering housing costs. They care about who's expanding access to healthcare. They care about those reproductive rights. And so our view is, yes, Joe Biden is old. Yes, he has to talk about this issue head on, but we have to expand the aperture to talk about the issues that we know matter most to voters when they go to the ballot box.
Kevin, the top of the ticket is now in clearer focus. Senator J.D. Vance joining Trump as his vice presidential candidate. Is Kamala Harris, the current vice president, up for the challenge? What does that first debate look like?
Vice President Harris is one of the best debaters out there, and I think she is more than prepared to debate Senator Vance if he is able and willing to come to that CBS debate that we have already agreed to. The vice president has a hugely, immensely important platform to talk about a lot of the issues that J.D. Vance is frankly on the wrong side of. Let's talk about free and fair elections. Let's talk about reproductive rights. J.D. Vance is one of the people that believes that exceptions for rape and incest survivors should not exist when it comes to abortion bans. We have to bring those issues front and center. And I can tell you, Vice President Harris is going to be very effective at litigating the case against him.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.